another episode of High Canada Magazine Interviews with me, Cy Williams. I'm here today at the Lift and Co Expo in Toronto, Ontario at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. I'm lucky enough to have the amazing George Smitherman with me today. George, you are the head of the Cannabis Council of Canada, and you are helping elicit amazing change within our industry. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me today.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it. It's my pleasure to see you again after a long time.
I know. I lived in your riding when I was in my 20s. I'm in my 50s now, and I look back at that time just with great fondness. So it's a real pleasure for me personally to get a chance to talk to you. So you are involved very heavily in the Canadian cannabis space. You are the head of the Cannabis Council of Canada. You are advocating for change. Your group is advocating for change and reform within the Canadian cannabis industry. I was wondering if you could bring me up to speed as to what made you make the jump from politics into the Canadian cannabis space?
Well, the thing about it is that I had to make the jump from politics because at a certain point in time, the people told me that I should find something else to do. So, after I contested the mayor's race in Toronto in 2010, I've pretty much been focused outside of politics. And the cannabis space is one that I've been active in since 2014.
Wow.
Back in the MMAR days, and had a role to play in the development of an application for a small licensed producer, worked with a couple of licensed producers, etc. So actually since 2014, the cannabis industry broadly has been more my occupational focus than anything else.
So it would be a fair statement to say that I could actually call you an OG, one of the originals, 2014, 2015. That was the rise of the cannabis activist and advocate here in Canada.
I don't really, thank you, it's a compliment. I tell my kids I'm the OG, the original gay. But I think really I defer to all of those activists and people that have paid like so much more a personal toll for the progress that we are all in a sense happy to live with now. So it's nice that you would say that, but really I would defer to the so many people that came before us that made what we have here in Canada possible. But I definitely am someone that I think as a gay person coming from my roots at Church and Wellesley, seeing the role that cannabis played with people, friends, lovers of mine in addressing some of the challenges associated with HIV and AIDS. Like I go back a long way to the proof points about medicinal cannabis, and that's really my foundation for participation in this sector, in this community.
Bring us back. What led to the formation of the Cannabis Council of Canada and your involvement with it?
The Cannabis Council of Canada first formed by a different name back when they were bringing forward the commercial growing regulations for medicinal cannabis.
Okay.
And over time, it's evolved to become the Cannabis Council. It's an industry association where we gather up license holders and ancillary industry supporters to try and affect change, at this point, to try and affect change to our regulatory model to improve our prospects at achieving the public health goals of legalization. And, we're very, very fortunate in Canada. Of course, we're a world-leading jurisdiction. I'm someone that spent my life in politics. I know that it was a big initiative for a prime minister, for a party to move forward with legalization. But now we have a 3 or 4 year track record, and there's some pretty pronounced challenges. So my job is to try and create a sense of urgency and elevate the dialogue to try and affect some of the changes so we can collectively do better.
Do you think you could speak on some of the challenges that you just mentioned?
I think, yes, for sure. I mean, at the heart of it, the legislation is driven by public health objectives, like getting people that are going to consume cannabis to consume supply of cannabis that's been products that have been tested or what have you. So I think in a big picture sense, maybe we have about a half of the market captured. the data around the size of the illicit market stuff, these are not strong data sets, so it's all a bit evaluative, okay? Like, you can't really take it to the bank, so to speak, but I would personally think that we're at around half and half.
Okay.
And that's not really quite good enough. If we want to say legalization objectives, I don't think very many people would say, well, after 4 or 5 years, if we've got half of all the business, that's good enough. I don't think it's good enough, and that's kind of underscores some of the challenges that we have. We have, as C3, addressed or initiate kind of 5 key asks, 5 key areas where we're looking for change.
Okay, so.
And within those, there are many. The first one is financial viability. I mean, the reality is that the ones making money in the sector are mostly the provinces and the people that make those excise stamps. And the rest of a lot of the licensed producers and the retailers, those regulated licensed players, it's a very tough go. The margins are tough, and the government's coming in really strong with its collective bite. So I'd say financial viability is one. A second one that we talked about is, even though we got legalization, we're still kind of in a nanny state. I can get 100 cases of tequila or 30 grams of cannabis, and within the 30 grams of cannabis, there's a whole bunch of other restrictions. An example of one of those nanny state restrictions that we're keen to address is the 10 milligram limit per pack that affects edibles. The reality is that's great for newcomers to cannabis.
Absolutely.
Go low, start slow, go low. That's great public health advice. But there's also mature cannabis consumers and people that are looking for medicine or
pain relief,
dosage or what have you, where the 10 milligrams just doesn't get the job done, and where people are forced to rip open multiple packages to consume more calories,
or go back to the unregulated market.
To the point, maybe not even go back to the regulated market. I think in the context of edibles, many people never left the. I think I said regulated the wrong way, but many people never left their legacy hookup, and we need to fight harder to bring those people over. That's about convenience, quality, pricing, and it's also certainly about more than 10 milligrams in a pack. So that's kind of like the poster child for what I would describe as kind of nanny state and red tape. But there's lots of different rules in there where we would look for some relief. The third ask is communication with consumers. We have amazing products. They've been innovated, tested, and the like. But if you go into a store and you don't know exactly what you want, the bud tender is is very restricted legally from what they can say about products, and in some cases probably they're a little bit restricted knowledge-wise in like being able to figure out how you can help people forward. We think that a mature model needs to see the room for people to be able, in an age-gated environment. I'm not talking about an ad on the side of a bus. Some people are talking about that. That's not our play, but we think within the appropriate age-gated environment or whatever, we've got to be able to convey characteristics of products to our consumers. So that's a third bucket of them. The fourth, I would say, is like balanced level playing field with the illicit market. I mean, we talked about the 10 milligram limit. I mean, they have a big leg up on us there. They're probably enjoying, a $500 million business line because we don't have what consumers are looking for. We can't do any advertising, but there's thousands of websites which seem to operate with a lot of autonomy, and oftentimes they're actually promoting the sale of knocked off products of Canadian license holders. We need more proactive capability to compete with the illicit market. They've got advantages over us that are really striking. And the last but certainly not least is we really feel strenuously that we need to focus on medicinal cannabis and improving patient access. Our medicine is taxed. That's outrageous. We believe that moving forward with things like pharmacy prescribing, getting pharmacists involved in prescribing
Surrounding pharmacies,
dispensing
yes.
would be a really important advance, because pharmacists are very knowledgeable and trusted healthcare providers. And the last point on this I'd say is Canada's moving forward with pharmacare. More money is being put on the table. There's obvious indications where medicinal cannabis is very good for patients. You know, a patient dealing with cancer treatment and the nausea associated with those, as an example, this is one indication where medicinal cannabis is very, very advantageous for patients. So we've also got to fight to try and make sure that we get public support and funding for cannabis as a medicine, modeling on countries like Germany, even Colombia, even maybe Australia, where they're actually taking more proactive stances in terms of advising people about how to use cannabis as a medicine. So those are five, but within each of those, there could be dozens and dozens and dozens of recommended regulatory changes where the regulation was written with a risk profile that I call belts and braces, kind of like the accountant that wears a belt and also wears suspenders. That's the regulatory model that we have.
A double redundancy.
It's choking us.
It is. Okay, what is in store for the rest of 22 for yourself and for the Cannabis Council of Canada?
Well, thank you. I mean, for 2022, like, we're coming out of the closet. Like, we're back to pressing the flesh in form of organized activities in Ottawa, where we're going to invite as much of the industry to come for a couple of days, spend some time together, and spend some time building relationships with members of Parliament. You know, I'm a former politician. Yeah. We met in a local community.
That's right.
All politics is local. That is a very important adage for our industry. Yeah. Someone asked me a question the other day, how is it that the dairy farmers get everything that they want? I said, well, every dairy farmer I've ever met knows the name of their member of Parliament. We need to emulate that in our industry, because we are everywhere. We're not we're not a sector like, oh, in this region but not in that region. We're everywhere. That's a very powerful starting point. But we've been so engaged in trying to grow our businesses and survive. Yeah. We haven't been putting very much time and energy into the relationship development with those who regulate us.
It's true. There is a disconnect.
Yeah. So not everybody that's in the cannabis business, maybe that has longer roots, thinks that it's exciting to drop by the G-Man's office and introduce themselves. Right. So we got to get over some of those barriers too. Yeah. We're legit. Yeah. We're regulated. We're billions of dollars of activity. We created tens of thousands of jobs. We've had $45 billion worth of gross domestic product contribution. But it's time to back that up at the relationship level with those that regulate us. So that's really my thing, is to call attention to the sheer and pressing necessity for us as an industry to spend a bit more time on relationship development with those that regulate us.
Now, speaking of relationships, could you run us through the members, the current members of the Cannabis Council of Canada?
Well, I can't remember them all. I've got about 50 or 60 different companies that are participating in C3.
Wow.
2 years ago when I started, it was a bit like the UN Security Council, just mostly larger players, but I've diversified the offering a lot. We got everything from micros with Ashley from Harvester on my board, pressing those issues forward, and we brought on a lot of the private licensed producers where their circumstances are different than others. So we're really working to be an organization that reflects the industry, and we've got place for everybody, and our fee structure is especially designed to reflect capacity to pay. So a micro and the largest company have the same vote at our annual meeting, but they obviously don't pay anywhere near the same fees. A micro license in membership in C3 is $1,000 a year, and like, we're very, very committed to making sure that we provide good value for the money. Absolutely. In a way, a lot of industries have people, lobbyists, government relations people. Our industry doesn't have room for that because the margins are tough. We are your government relations shop, and if you could lend time a couple of times a year to come to Ottawa with us, we'll help everyone to be more effective at that relationship piece with their member of parliament.
Bridging the gap between government and the Canadian cannabis space. That is amazing and very well said, George. And that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank George Smitherman from the Canadian Cannabis Council of Canada for sitting down and talking to us today. This is Cy Williams, High Canada Magazine, and I'll see you later.